It is clear from my preliminary thesis here that I am defining the significance of the mediating potentials of objects like the novel, the book, the virtual reality interface as objects. That is, objects as they have returned to critical and theoretical conversations as entities not for human beingness, as conquest, properties, or inert facilitators of supreme human will and imagination, but as entities in their own right, as objects that are reproducers of meaning across epistemological and ontological registers. I'm particularly compelled by the work of thinkers such as Levi Bryant, an object ontologist that tells us the substantiality of objects is not a bare substratum, but rather an absolute individual system or organization of powers. Powers are the capacities of an object, or what it can do. Bryant refers to this perspective on the power of objects as virtual proper being, a critical framing intended to retrain our thinking about objects of modes of just presentation and inflection, that is, artifacts capable of just presenting human intention or thought, or in the other direction, inflecting a priori human thought or will. Toward an understanding of mediating objects as sites of reproduction, and not just of anthropocentric materializations of pre-existing meaning or materiality, but of entire ecologies. My investment in drawing on this critical field is in exploring what I am calling in this next book project, ecologies of perception, a phrase that will be the center of the remainder of this presentation, implicitly or explicitly. The second movement of my talk takes up the question, what might our engagement with digital things look like were we not occupiers of the workplace of purification and instead the orchestrators of more generous and expansive labors on the work of mediation? What might digital thingness do if we were to have followed, say, Roy Ascott's line of thought in 1989? Roy Ascott saw the electronic writing on the wall of the new wave of computing and telecommunications. However, he offered a very different potential trajectory of thought than what we typically associate with digital modalities, digital perception, the digital humanities, and arts. Ascott's vision was in using the networks and complexities to computing environments to rethink an aesthetics more attuned to cultural systems than the aesthetic object as some fixed semantic configuration. He called this field telematic art. In a telematic art, meaning is not created by the artist or author, distributed through the network and received by the observer. Meaning is the product of interaction between the observer and the system, the content of which is in a state of flux, of endless change and transformation. Then, reconstituted at the interface as image, text, or sound. The sensory output may be differentiated further as existing on screen, as articulated structure or material, as architecture, as environment, or in virtual space. The final movement and closing sequence of my presentation offers my own translation in critical and aesthetic practice of what I have explored in the first two sections of this talk. As I mentioned at the outset, this work is drawn from my in-progress multimodal monograph, The Distributed Sovereign, Networked and Mediated Life. What makes this project unusual, alongside my deployment of various modes of writing, critical writing, is the inclusion of digital standalone exemplars and installations that form a kind of virtual nucleus to sections of the book. One of these is a project that I will introduce here today in a moment that serves as my experimentation with this idea of an alternative ecology of perception through digital modalities. I am aided in this particular instance by the fabulous work of a digital artist and designer whom I have collaborated with in the past, Ali Crandall. The project could be described as a kind of digital edition, but it strives for more than this, might imply along the lines I've been tracing throughout this talk. In particular, her hybrid text, Observations Upon Experimental Philosophy, to which is added the description of a new blazing world, was an experimental text itself caught up in the reordering of sovereign functions across politics and aesthetics. The text referred to by Cavendish was an hermaphrodite text. It mixes complicated critiques of the New Observer science with a wild fantastical fiction about a kidnapped female aristocrat who finds her way to a science fiction universe where all the men die, and is filled with hybrid human animals, philosophy, and homoerotic plots and subplots. It's quite a ride. The two texts were published together and reference each other through keywords, motifs, and the most fascinating play with scale, micro and macro scale, across her observed fictional and scientific universes. Cavendish's resulting network text was, like Duchamp's glass, an early example of a networking interaction in a field of uncertainty, in which the observer is creator and meaning is unstable. Of course, Cavendish's telematic text, the unfolding experiment in an alternate ecology of perceptions, could not find its place with the triumph of late-stage print culture, a culture whose expectations orbited around sovereign individuals, authorship, and the balkanization of science and art, disciplines like territories kept apart by the panoptic walls of rationalism. The hermaphrodite text was divided up, printed as fiction, a little history of philosophy, but never a conjoined monster in the last centuries. It's never been produced. Part of my work has been to collaboratively make things that try out these theoretical and aesthetic positions. And so I end with a glimpse of a thing from the project, the digital hermaphrodite text. The digital platform for this project, the design was chosen because in part it embodies in digital form many of the aesthetic and philosophical elements of Cavendish's text experiments with mediated forms. The split-screen triptych view allows for presentation of Cavendish's literary and scientific text side by side. This feature of the authoring platform allows us to represent the text as literally hybrid hermaphroditic companion pieces, an objective Cavendish's text articulates in the preface to the first publication. The two texts and various contemporary and historical media artifacts with text, images, and contemporary and historical elements all ghost one another within the reading interface. The navigational matrix allows for readers to follow various paths through the text, providing a creative disruption to a more linear reading experience, and allowing specific relationship in the works to merge across the text themselves or within a specific keyword. Metadata thus becomes a kind of technical embodiment of the vibrant multiplicities to Cavendish's text. Mary Bain Campbell has remarked that Cavendish must construct her textual worlds from the, quote, atom up, words and texts as scaled selves, texts that embody the platonic erotics of two female narrators, social crowds imagined inside singularities of time and space and single bodies, textual boundaries whose edges constantly shift and morph. The metadata features allow for substantive creative play in manifesting such scalable and non-linear aspects of the project. Cavendish's textual productions are open source experiments in crossing genres and connecting and disconnecting textual and narrative elements. The text engages in serious play with the instabilities of creative figural expression amid the frightening uncertainties of world making across micro and macrocosmos. Thanks.